Hey everyone, it's Jeff Farina with Pocketnow.com. In our initial unboxing video of the Samsung Transform, we were able to give you a brief look at the actual hardware of this device. Well, in this video, we're going to go deeper and get the nitty-gritty and some of the hard specs of what makes up the Samsung Transform. We're also going to compare it side by side toward the end of the video to the big brother, the Samsung Epic 4G. So, let's begin. Alright, now the first thing you're going to see when you look at the Samsung Transform is actually a front-facing camera here, right above the Sprint logo. And toward the bottom, you're going to see your standard 4 capacitive Android buttons. That is your menu, home, back, and search key. Now moving right onto the side here, the right side, we're going to see a dedicated camera button, which is always a nice addition to have because that makes taking pictures on a touchscreen much easier. We're going to have a dedicated voice-activated or voice command button. Moving on from there, you're going to have your power/lock screen switch. The top of the device will have your 3.5-inch or your 3.5mm headphone jack. And you're going to have what Samsung has kind of started to include now on every device, which is actually very cool. It is a sliding mechanism door for the micro USB port. And what that basically means is you're not going to damage that port because you actually have protection now. As you see there, it actually clicks into place. Moving to the left side of the device, you're going to, of course, have your volume rocker up and down. It's going to do it for that side. And the bottom will have your mic port, as well as actually a little spot where you can put your fingernail in to get to the battery, which we will see next. Before we do look at that, though, we want to actually flip over to the back of the device. And you'll see a 3-megapixel camera with an LED flash. This, of course, has the sliding keyboard, which makes this a different alternative from some of the other touchscreen devices that are on Sprint and the other carriers out there. Now, as you'll see, the keys are very evenly spaced, and they're actually a soft key. It's almost like a gel, but it does provide a good amount of tactile feedback. It does click with every key that you hit, so you do get that feedback that it is in fact working. Now, before we do take off the battery, the last thing we want to talk about here is actually the screen. It is a 3.5-inch screen with a resolution of 320 by 480, and that is an LCD screen. It's not a Super AMOLED or anything too special in that case, but it's not the bottom of the barrel. Now, lastly, it does also have a 800 megahertz processor, as well as 256 megabytes of RAM and 512 megabytes of ROM. Now, let's go ahead and get to the battery by actually prying off that back panel there. You're going to see your typical Samsung 1500 milliamp hour battery, which will actually provide you, at least what it's rated to provide you, is 6 hours talk time, as well as 350 hours standby time. Now, this does have a micro SD port. This will come with a 2 gigabyte micro SD card included, but it's compatible with up to a 32 gigabyte micro SD card. Lastly, as far as the connectivity options go, you're going to have the Bluetooth 3.0. That's going to be there, as well as Wi-Fi B and G. So the typical connectivity options are here with this device. Now, the device weighs actually 5.37 ounces, which is actually 152 grams if you're able to convert that very quickly, which is much smaller than the Samsung Epic 4G. And we actually have a 4G here with us. We can do a direct comparison. So what we'll do is we'll actually zoom out here a little bit and bring the Samsung Epic 4G in side by side. Now, the Epic 4G is the bigger brother to this device. It has a faster processor. It also has the 4G, hence the name. Now, the first thing you're going to notice is actually the screen difference here. This screen is actually a black or a blue, whereas this is the typical, almost like a graphite appearance. And that is because this is an LCD screen, whereas this is a Super AMOLED screen. But where the Transform really shines is actually going to be just in the overall size. In terms of the thickness, it's very tough to tell here, but they are actually pretty much right on par. The Transform is actually a little smaller than the Epic 4G. Now, of course, the size is a very different story. So if you're looking for a smaller device, when it's easier to hold in the hand, it's not going to take up too much space in your pocket, the Transform is definitely a viable alternative in that case. What we'll do actually is slide open these keyboards and show you the two differences in the keyboards. And as you can see there, the top keyboard is going to be your Epic 4G, so it has the extra row, whereas the bottom will have the Transform's keyboard. Now, looking at these two side by side, it's actually somewhat easier to type on the Transform, only because those keys are a little recessed, so it makes it harder to have a typo, as well as you get that softer appearance, so your fingers will actually grip to the keys, whereas these are a hard plastic on the Epic 4G. Now, in terms of these screens, of course, these are both capacitive screens. These are actually both set on automatic brightness right now. One thing you're going to notice is that the Epic 4G is a much brighter screen. Now what we have found is that the Epic 4G is also a more responsive screen. It tends to be a little difficult here to actually get exact details with the screen. Sometimes scrolling through will actually render a false click on some of the different shortcuts. So this has been our hardware overview of the Samsung Transform, as well as the direct comparison to its bigger brother, the Samsung Epic 4G. As always, thank you very much for watching, everyone. Our next video will actually be the software overview part 2, where we're actually going to compare some of the browser test speeds as well as the YouTube application speeds to the Epic 4G here. As always, please give us a thumbs up if you like this video, and stay tuned for the next.